I was standing on my daughter's front porch with a warm apple pie in my hands when I heard my granddaughter ask, "Mom, why does Grandma always live like she's poor?" Melissa didn't even hesitate. She laughed softly and said, "Because your grandmother is nobody's sweetheart. She never accomplished anything." I stood there without making a sound, my heart breaking one quiet piece at a time. What Melissa didn't know was that my grandchildren walked past my name every single day at school, and very soon the truth she had buried beneath years of pride would become impossible to hide. If this story touches your heart, I'd love for you to press like before we continue. And if family stories about love, regret, and second chances mean something to you, I hope you'll subscribe and stay with me until the very end. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what would you have felt if you had overheard those words, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I didn't go inside right away. I stood there on Melissa's porch holding that apple pie like it suddenly weighed 100 pounds. My hands were trembling, but not from age, from something much quieter, something deeper, the kind of pain that doesn't scream. It settles in your chest and stays there. Nobody. That word echoed in my mind long after her voice faded. I had heard many things in my life. I had been called strict by students, stubborn by colleagues, even old-fashioned by friends, but nobody that was new. And somehow, it hurt more than all the rest combined. I took a slow breath, straightened my shoulders, and finally knocked on the door like I hadn't heard a thing. Melissa opened it with that polished smile she used for clients. The one that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. "Mom, you didn't have to bring anything," she said, glancing down at the pie. "I know," I replied gently. "I just thought the kids might like it." Olivia came running first. "Grandma, did you make apple again?" "I did," I said, forcing a smile. Ethan followed already, grabbing plates from the kitchen. Best day ever. Children don't fake love. That's what I've always believed. But they do learn how to measure people. And someone had been teaching them. I stepped into the house, the scent of expensive candles filling the air. Everything in Melissa's home looked perfect. Polished floors, designer furniture, framed photos of vacations I had never been invited to. There was no trace of where she came from. No trace of me. I set the pie down on the kitchen counter and watched my grandchildren laugh as they cut into it. For a moment, I let myself forget what I had heard. For a moment, I just watched them be children, because that was always enough for me. "I've got a showing tomorrow," Melissa said, casually scrolling through her phone. "Big property, lakefront." "That's wonderful," I said. She nodded but didn't look up. "Yeah, well, because that was always enough for me." "I've got a showing tomorrow," Melissa said, casually scrolling through her phone. "Big property, lakefront." "That's wonderful," I said. She nodded but didn't look up. "Yeah, well, that's how you move forward in life." I didn't respond. I had learned long ago that some conversations weren't meant to be finished, only endured. I used to think Melissa would grow out of it, that phase where everything is about appearances, about proving something to the world. But somewhere along the way, that phase became her identity. And I never quite figured out when I stopped being part of the picture she wanted to present. "I might need you to watch Ethan this weekend," she added. "We've got a client dinner." Of course. That was when I was most useful. "Just let me know what time," I said. She gave a quick nod. No thank you. No hesitation. Just expectation. I didn't mind helping. I never had. But there's a difference between being needed and being valued. And I had learned to tell the difference. Later that evening, Olivia sat beside me at the dining table, her notebook open. Grandma, can you look at this? She asked. Of course. She turned the page toward me. An essay draft. Neatly written, thoughtful, full of promise. It's for a scholarship, she said. The Henderson Scholarship. My fingers paused for just a second on the edge of the paper. There it was again. That name. My name. But I kept my voice steady. That's a very good opportunity. She shrugged. Mom says it's not that important. She thinks I should focus on building connections instead. I smiled gently. Connections matter, but so does hard work. And this? I tapped the paper lightly. This is something you earn. Olivia looked at me for a long moment, like she was trying to understand something she couldn't quite put into words. I think I want to apply anyway, she said quietly. I think you should, I replied. Ethan leaned over from the other side. What do you even get if you win? Olivia rolled her eyes. Money for college, that's it. I chuckled softly. Sometimes that's everything. Melissa glanced up from across the room. Plenty of families donate money to look good, she said. It's not always about something meaningful. I didn't say anything. I just looked back down at Olivia's essay. Because I knew exactly what that scholarship meant. I knew every student it had helped, every life it had changed, every story behind it. But none of that mattered right now. Not to Melissa. Not yet. Grandma, can you help me with this part? Olivia asked, pointing to a paragraph. I leaned closer, reading carefully. Her words were sincere, honest, a little uncertain but full of heart. You just need to tell them why this matters to you, I said softly. She frowned. I don't know if it matters that much. I looked at her, really looked at her. You won't always recognize the things that change your life while they're happening, I said. Sometimes you only understand later. She nodded slowly, like she was storing that thought somewhere important. Across the room, Melissa sighed. Don't overthink it, Olivia. It's just a scholarship. Just a scholarship. I repeated those words in my mind, and I almost smiled. Because if she only knew how many nights I had stayed awake planning it, how many sacrifices had been made, how many dreams had been carried forward through it. But I had made a promise, and I intended to keep it. No matter how invisible it made me, no matter how small it made me appear in my own daughter's eyes. That night, when I finally drove home in my old car, I passed the high school. The lights were still on, and right there by the entrance, the banner hung proudly, Henderson Scholarship, Changing Lives Through Education. I slowed down just enough to look at it. Not with pride, not with regret, just with quiet understanding. Because legacy doesn't always look the way people expect. Sometimes it looks like being forgotten in your own family, while strangers carry your name with gratitude. And as I drove past that sign, I whispered something I hadn't said out loud in years. I kept my promise, William. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time in a long while, I had a feeling that something was about to change. The next time I was invited over, it wasn't really an invitation. It was a text message from Melissa. Mom, can you come by at 3? I've got back-to-back appointments. No greeting, no question, just a time. I stared at the message for a moment before replying. Of course, because that's what I always said. Of course. When I arrived, Ethan opened the door before I even knocked. Grandma, you're here, he said, already running back toward the living room. Melissa barely looked up as she grabbed her car keys. He's got homework. Olivia's upstairs. Dinner's in the fridge. I understand, I said. She paused for half a second, then added, Try not to let them eat too much sugar this time. I nodded. Then she was gone, just like that. The house felt different when she wasn't there. Quieter, lighter somehow. Like everyone could finally breathe. Ethan flopped onto the couch. Grandma, can you help me with math? Of course. I sat beside him looking at his worksheet. Fractions. I smiled. These aren't so bad. He groaned. They are when Mom explains them. I chuckled softly. Let's try a different way. We worked through the problems slowly, step by step. I showed him how to break them down, how to see patterns instead of just numbers. After a while, his face lit up. Oh, that actually makes sense. See, I said gently, you just needed a different approach. He looked at me for a moment, then asked, Grandma, were you ever a teacher or something? The question caught me off guard, but I kept my voice steady. Yes, for a long time. How long? 35 years. His eyes widened. That's like forever. I smiled. It felt like it sometimes. So you were good at it? I hesitated. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I didn't know how much I was allowed to say. I cared about my students. I said, finally. That's what mattered most. He nodded slowly like he was processing something new. Before he could ask anything else, Olivia came downstairs with her laptop in hand. Grandma, can you look at my essay again? Of course. She sat beside me, scrolling to the latest version. I could see she had worked on it. A lot. It's better, she said almost defensively. I think. I read quietly. Her words had grown stronger, more personal, more honest. She was starting to understand what she wanted to say. This is very good, I told her. She exhaled. You always say that. Because it's true. She studied my face for a moment, like she was trying to decide if she believed me. Why do you care so much about this scholarship? She asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. I felt Ethan glance up beside me. I chose my words carefully. Because opportunities like this can change everything I said. For the right person. She frowned. Did it ever change anything for you? I smiled softly. Not in the way you think. She didn't push further, but I could see it in her eyes. The curiosity was growing. Later that evening, while Ethan was finishing his homework, Olivia sat across from me at the kitchen table. Mom says scholarships are for people who don't have other options, she said quietly. I folded my hands together. And what do you think? She shrugged. I think it depends. That's a good answer. She looked down at her hands. Do you think I should apply? I didn't hesitate this time. Yes, I said. Even if Mom doesn't care about it, especially then. She let out a small breath. I just don't want to waste my time. I leaned forward slightly. Olivia, nothing you do to better yourself is ever a waste of time, I said gently. She nodded, but I could tell she was still unsure. Ethan suddenly chimed in from the couch. If you win, do you get your name on something? She rolled her eyes. It's not about that, but it would be cool, he insisted. Like, imagine seeing your name at school every day. I looked at him, my heart tightening just a little, because he had no idea how close he was to the truth. Sometimes, I said quietly, names aren't the most important part. He frowned. Then what as I thought about that for a moment? Impact, I said. What you leave behind for others. He didn't fully understand, but Olivia did. I could see it in the way she looked at me. Later, when Melissa came home, the atmosphere shifted again. How was everything? She asked, dropping her bag on the counter. Fine, I said. Ethan ran up to her. Grandma helped me with fractions, and I actually get it now. How was everything? She asked, dropping her bag on the counter. Fine, I said. Ethan ran up to her. Grandma helped me with fractions, and I actually get it now. Melissa smiled briefly. That's good. Then she turned to Olivia. Did you work on your application? A little, Olivia said. Melissa sighed. I still don't think that's where your focus should be. Olivia's shoulders tensed. It's important to me. Melissa crossed her arms. What's important is positioning yourself for success. I stayed quiet, but inside, something shifted. Because I had heard that tone before, that certainty, that belief that success only comes in one form. And I knew how wrong it was. Mom, Olivia said carefully, what if success looks different for different people? Melissa gave a short laugh. That's something people say when they don't have real success. The room fell silent. Ethan looked confused. Olivia looked hurt. And I just watched. Because I knew this moment mattered. Not because of what was said, but because of what was starting to be questioned. That night, as I prepared to leave, Olivia walked me to the door. Grandma, she said quietly, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think Mom is right about you? The question hit me harder than anything Melissa had said. I looked at her carefully. No, I said, gently. She nodded like she had expected that answer. Me neither, she whispered. And for the first time, I realized something important. The story Melissa had been telling about me was starting to crack. A few days later, Olivia showed up at my house unannounced. That alone told me something had changed. Melissa never encouraged visits unless they were planned, scheduled, and convenient. But Olivia stood on my porch that afternoon holding her laptop like it mattered more than anything else in the world. Grandma, she said when I opened the door, slightly out of breath. Can I come in? Of course, I said, stepping aside. She walked in slowly, looking around like she hadn't really seen my home before. Most people didn't notice small things unless they were looking for something, and Olivia was looking now. I led her to the kitchen. Do you want some tea? She nodded. Yes, please. While the kettle warmed, she sat at the table opening her laptop, but not typing anything, just staring at the screen. Something on your mind? I asked gently. She hesitated. Then she turned the screen toward me. I rewrote the essay, she said. I adjusted my glasses and leaned closer. The difference was immediate. Her writing had shifted. It wasn't just about achievement anymore. It was about purpose. She had written about education as a bridge, about opportunity, about wanting to give back one day. My chest tightened as I read. Because I had heard those words before, years ago, from someone else. This is very strong, I said quietly. She studied my face carefully, stronger than before. Yes. She nodded, but she didn't smile. Grandma, she said slowly, why do you talk about opportunity like it's personal? I paused. There it was again. That question, that growing awareness. I poured the tea carefully, giving myself a moment. Because I've seen what it can do, I said. She didn't look away. Where? In the lives of others. She leaned back slightly. You always say that, but you never say how. I placed the cup in front of her. Some stories don't belong to just one person, I replied softly. She frowned. That sounds like you're avoiding the question. I smiled gently. Maybe I am. She didn't laugh. Instead, she took a deep breath and said, Mom says people who don't talk about their success usually don't have any. The words stung, not because they were new, but because they were now being repeated by someone I loved deeply. I looked at Olivia for a long moment. "Do you believe that I asked?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know anymore. That was honest, and honesty is where change begins." "You don't have to decide today," I said. "Just keep asking questions." She nodded slowly. After a moment, she looked back at her essay. "There's one part I'm stuck on," she said. "The section where I explain why this scholarship matters to me." I leaned closer again. "Tell me what you feel," I said. She stared at the blank paragraph. I feel like she started then stopped, like it's important, but I don't know why. I smiled softly. "That's a good place to start." She looked at me confused. "You don't always understand something at the beginning," I continued. "Sometimes you write your way into understanding." She considered that, then began typing. I didn't interrupt. I just sat there listening to the soft rhythm of her fingers on the keyboard. After a few minutes, she stopped. "Can I read it out loud?" she asked. "Please." She took a breath. "This scholarship matters to me because it represents more than financial support. It represents belief. It shows that someone somewhere sees potential in students they may never meet, and that kind of belief can change the direction of a life." She stopped looking unsure. I felt my eyes sting slightly. "That's beautiful," I said. She searched my face again. "You really think so? I know so." She smiled this time, a small one, but real. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. "Mom wants to know where I am. Do you want me to drive you back?" I asked. She shook her head. "I can walk." She closed her laptop, then paused at the door. "Grandma." "Yes." "Do you ever feel like people don't see who you really are?" The question hit deeper than anything else she had asked. I thought about it, about the years, about the silence. "Yes," I said quietly. "Sometimes." She nodded slowly. "Me too." I watched her leave something heavy settling in my chest, because I knew what that feeling could grow into. And I didn't want that for her. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Pauline," she said warmly, "we're finalizing everything for the ceremony." I sat down in my living room chair. I figured it was about that time. "We'd really like you to be there," she continued. "Not just in the audience." I closed my eyes briefly. "Rebecca, just listen," she said gently. "It's been 20 years, hundreds of students, thousands of lives touched. You deserve—" "I didn't do it to be seen," I interrupted softly. There was a pause on the line. "I know," she said. "But sometimes being seen helps others understand what's possible." I looked out the window. The street was quiet, peaceful. "Is Olivia Carter still on the finalist list?" I asked. Rebecca hesitated. "Yes, very strong application." I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "Then I'll come," I said, "but only as planned." "In the back row?" she asked. "Yes." Another pause. "All right," she agreed. "But things have a way of changing, Pauline." I smiled faintly. "Yes," I said. "I've noticed." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, thinking about promises, about silence, about the cost of both. My eyes drifted to an old photograph on the shelf. William, he was smiling the way he always did when he believed in something completely. You always said education could change a life, I whispered. The room was quiet, but somehow I felt like he heard me. And for the first time, I wondered if the life about to change wasn't just Olivia's. There are moments in life that divide everything into before and after. For me, that moment came in a hospital room that smelled too clean and far too final. William was lying in bed, his hand still warm in mine, even though I could already feel him slipping away. "Pauline," he said softly, his voice thinner than I had ever heard it. "I'm here," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "You've always been here." I tried to smile back, but my throat was too tight. "We didn't finish everything," he continued. "We still have time," I said quickly. "You're going to get better." He shook his head slowly. "Not in fear, not in sadness, just acceptance." "No," he said gently. "But you do." That was William. Even at the end, he wasn't thinking about what he was losing. He was thinking about what I still had. "You remember what we talked about?" he asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I could say the words out loud. "The students?" I said quietly. He squeezed my hand weakly. "The ones who never get the chance, not because they're not capable, but because no one ever believes in them." Tears blurred my vision. "We can still help them," I said. "We always planned to after retirement we were going to." "You will," he interrupted softly. "Not we. You." That was the moment I understood. "You're asking me to do it alone," I said. "I'm trusting you too," he replied. I looked down, unable to hold his gaze. "It's too big," I whispered. "We needed both of us." He smiled again, that same calm, steady smile that had carried us through every difficult moment in our lives. "You were always stronger than me, Pauline," he said. I shook my head immediately. "That's not true." "It is," he said. "You just never needed to prove it." His hand tightened slightly around mine. "Promise me," he said. I closed my eyes, because I knew what that promise would cost. Not just in money, not just in time, but in everything. "Promise me you won't let it become about recognition," he added. I looked at him again. "Promise me it stays about them. The student, the ones with potential no one sees. The ones who just need one person to believe." "I promise," I said. His grip relaxed. And just like that, the moment divided my life into before and after. After the funeral, everything felt quieter. Empty, but not in a loud way. In a still way. Melissa came home for a few days, but even then something felt distant between us. She had already started building her own life, her own priorities, and I didn't blame her for that, but I could feel it, the space growing. "Mom, what are you going to do now?" she asked one evening. I looked at her across the kitchen table. "I'm going to keep going," I said. She frowned slightly, doing what I hesitated. Then I remembered my promise. "Teaching," I said, in a different way. She didn't ask more, and I didn't explain. Because some things don't need to be announced. They need to be built. Over time, piece by piece. The first thing I did was meet with Rebecca. We had known each other for years. She understood William's vision almost as well as I did. "You're serious," she said after I told her everything. "Yes." She leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Do you know how much this is going to take? I do. And you still want to stay anonymous? I have to." She raised an eyebrow. "Why? Because if people start giving for recognition, then it stops being about the students." She nodded slowly. "That's exactly what William would have said." I smiled faintly. That's because it was his idea first. She opened a folder. We can set up a foundation, structure it properly, make sure it lasts. I want it to last longer than me, I said. She looked at me carefully. Then we'll do it right. And we did. I sold the lake house first. Melissa didn't understand that. You're selling it? She asked over the phone. That's where we used to spend summers. I know, I said gently. Why would you get rid of it? Because I don't need it anymore. She sighed. You don't need to make such drastic decisions. But it wasn't drastic to me. It was necessary. Then I sold the investments William and I had built over decades. Not all at once. Carefully. Strategically. Enough to build something sustainable. Enough to keep the promise. Rebecca handled the legal side, the paperwork, the structure, the things that turned a dream into something real. What are we calling it? She asked one afternoon. I paused. Henderson Education Foundation? I said. She smiled. Simple, honest. Exactly. The first scholarship was small, just enough to help one student. I remember sitting in the back of the auditorium that year, watching a young girl walk onto the stage. She looked nervous, hopeful. Exactly the kind of student William had believed in. When they announced the scholarship in the name of the Henderson Foundation, she started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like she couldn't quite believe it. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. Years passed. One student became 10, 10 became 50, 50 became hundreds. Each one with a story. Each one with a future that might have been different without it. And every year, I sat in the back row, watching, listening, never stepping forward, never needing to. Because the promise had never been about me. It had always been about them. But somewhere along the way, while I was building something meaningful for strangers, I had lost something closer. Melissa stopped asking questions, stopped wondering, stopped seeing. And eventually, she decided there was nothing there to see. That I was just while I was building something meaningful for strangers, I had lost something closer. Melissa stopped asking questions, stopped wondering, stopped seeing. And eventually, she decided there was nothing there to see, that I was just nobody. And maybe that was my fault too, because I had chosen silence, chosen invisibility, chosen to let my own daughter believe I had done nothing with my life. All to protect a promise, all to protect something she never even noticed. But now, things were starting to change. Because Olivia was asking questions, because the truth has a way of finding its way to the surface. No matter how carefully you hide it. A week later, Olivia called me. Not a text, not a quick message, a call. Grandma, she said as soon as I picked up, can I ask you something? But you have to promise to be honest. I smiled softly, even though she couldn't see it. I've always been honest with you. She hesitated. I could hear her breathing on the other end. It's about the scholarship, she said. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. What about it? I've been doing research, she continued. For my application, I wanted to understand where it came from. That's a good idea, I said calmly. I talked to some past winners, she added. That caught my attention. Oh, they all said the same thing, she went on. That the Henderson Scholarship changed their lives. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes, that part was true. They said the founder never shows up, she continued, that no one knows who it is. I didn't answer right away, because silence sometimes says more than words. Grandma, she said again, softer this time. Why does that sound like you? My heart skipped. There it was. The question I knew would come eventually. but not this soon. Why would you think that? I asked gently. Because of the way you talk about it, she said. Like you've seen it happen. Like you were there. I have seen it happen, I replied. But not like that, she insisted. Not like someone watching from far away. I walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the quiet street. Olivia, I said carefully. Sometimes we feel connected to things because we understand them, not because we created them. She didn't respond immediately. I found an old article, she said finally. My grip on the phone tightened. What article? About the first year of the foundation, she explained. It had pictures from the ceremony. I felt something shift in my chest, and I asked, keeping my voice steady. I think I saw you, she said. The words landed softly, but their weight was heavy. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it. I simply asked, what makes you think that? There was a woman sitting in the back row, she said. Not on stage, not being recognized, just watching. I closed my eyes. I could picture that moment clearly. The young girl, the tears, the quiet applause. She looked like you, Olivia continued. Just younger. That could be anyone, I said gently. No, she said firmly. It didn't feel like anyone. That word, feel. She was starting to trust it. I don't understand why someone would do something like that and stay hidden, she added. I leaned my forehead lightly against the glass. Because sometimes, I said softly, the work matters more than the recognition. She was quiet again. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for. Did you ever know the founder? I could have lied. It would have been easier, cleaner, safer. But I had never lied to Olivia, and I wasn't about to start now. Yes, I said. Her breath caught slightly. You did. Yes. How I took a slow breath. Through someone who helped build the foundation, I said. Who? Rebecca Collins. There was a pause. I've seen that name, Olivia said. She's still involved, right? Yes. Can I talk to her? She asked suddenly. That surprised me. Why do you want to do that? Because I want to understand, she said. Not just for the essay, for real. I smiled faintly. That was exactly the kind of curiosity William believed in. I'll see what I can do, I said. Thank you, she replied. Before hanging up, she added quietly, Grandma, I don't think you're who Mom says you are. My chest tightened. I never thought you were, she continued, and then the line went silent. That night, I sat alone in my living room thinking about everything that was unfolding. The questions, the connections, the truth inching closer to the surface. And I knew something important. I couldn't control what Olivia discovered, but I could control how she understood it. The next day, I called Rebecca. She's starting to figure it out, I said. Rebecca didn't sound surprised. I wondered when that would happen. She wants to talk to you. There was a brief pause. Are you okay with that? She asked. I thought about it carefully, about the promise, about the years of silence, about what was at stake. Yes, I said finally, but only if we're careful. Of course, Rebecca replied. I would never go against your wishes. I know, I said. We arranged a meeting at her office later that week. Neutral ground, safe, controlled. Or at least that's what I told myself. When the day came, Olivia arrived early. I watched her walk into the building from across the street. She looked different, more focused, more determined. Like she wasn't just chasing a scholarship anymore. She was chasing the truth. Inside, Rebecca greeted her warmly. I've heard a lot about you, she said. Olivia smiled politely. Happyfully good things. Only good things? She was chasing the truth. Inside, Rebecca greeted her warmly. I've heard a lot about you, she said. Olivia smiled politely. Hopefully good things. Only good things, Rebecca replied. They sat down in her office. I stayed out of sight, listening, waiting. Can you tell me about the foundation? Olivia asked. Rebecca nodded. Of course. She spoke carefully. About the mission, about the students, about the impact. Everything true, everything meaningful, but not everything. And the founder? Olivia asked. Rebecca paused. Just for a second. Someone who believed deeply in education, she said. That's all. Olivia pressed. That's what matters, Rebecca replied. Olivia leaned forward slightly. Did they ever come here? She asked. Rebecca smiled softly. More than you think. That answer made Olivia sit back, thinking, processing. Why stay anonymous? She asked again. Rebecca glanced toward the door, toward where she knew I was. Because some people don't need the world to know who they are, she said. They just need to know they made a difference. Silence filled the room. And in that silence, I realized something. The truth wasn't going to explode all at once. It was going to unfold, piece by piece, question by question, until it became impossible to ignore. And when that moment came, everything would change. Not just for Olivia, but for all of us. After the meeting with Rebecca, Olivia didn't call me right away. That silence told me more than words ever could. She was thinking, connecting pieces, and when someone like Olivia starts putting things together. After the meeting with Rebecca, Olivia didn't call me right away. That silence told me more than words ever could. She was thinking, connecting pieces, and when someone like Olivia starts putting things together, they don't stop halfway. 3 days passed, then 4. On the 5th day, Melissa called me, which almost never happened. Mom, she said, her voice tight. What did you say to Olivia? I sat up straighter in my chair. What do you mean? She's acting strange, Melissa replied, asking questions, digging into things that don't concern her. I took a slow breath. Like what? She's obsessed with that scholarship now, she said. Talking about it like it's some life-changing opportunity. I almost smiled, because it was. Is that a bad thing? I asked calmly. It's a distraction, Melissa snapped. She should be focusing on networking internships, real opportunities. Opportunities come in many forms, I said gently. There was a pause. Then her voice sharpened. Did you put this in her head? The question hung there, heavy, accusing. I encouraged her to think for herself, I said. That's not what I asked, Melissa replied. I closed my eyes briefly. Melissa, I said quietly, your daughter is intelligent, curious. That's not something to suppress. I'm not suppressing anything, she shot back. I'm guiding her. I almost said something honest, something that had been building for years. But I stopped myself because this wasn't the moment. Is there anything else? I asked instead. She exhaled sharply. Just don't confuse her. And then she hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, because I knew exactly what she meant. Melissa didn't want Olivia to see a different version of success, a version that didn't revolve around status, around appearances, around recognition. Because if Olivia saw that, then everything Melissa believed about me would start to fall apart. That evening, there was a knock on my door. I didn't need to look through the window to know who it was. Olivia stood there again, but this time, she wasn't holding her laptop. She was holding something else. A folder. "Grandma?" She said, her voice steady. "I need to talk to you." I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, placing the folder on my table. "I went back to Rebecca's office," she said. "That surprised me." "You did. She gave me copies of the Foundation's early documents." Olivia continued. "Public records, nothing confidential." My heart began to beat a little faster. And she opened the folder. Carefully, like it mattered. "Look at this," she said, sliding a paper toward me. I glanced down. And there it was, the original registration form. The Henderson Education Foundation. My signature. Clear. Unmistakable. I didn't touch the paper. Didn't move. Didn't speak. "I didn't notice it at first," Olivia said quietly. "But then I saw the name." She looked up at me. "Pauline Henderson." The room felt very still, very quiet. "Grandma?" she whispered. "That's you." I met her eyes, and for the first time, I didn't look away. "Yes," I said. The word was soft, but it changed everything. She stared at me, not shocked, not confused, just trying to understand. "You're the founder?" she asked. I shook my head gently. "No," I said. "Not exactly." Her brow furrowed. "Then what are you?" I took a deep breath. "The person who kept a promise," I said. "She person who kept a promise," I said. She sat down slowly. "Processing. You created the scholarship," she said. "I built it," I corrected softly. "But it wasn't my idea alone." "Whose idea was it? Your grandfather's?" I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "I never met him," sat down slowly. "Processing." "You created the scholarship," she said. "I built it," I corrected softly. "But it wasn't my idea alone." "Whose idea was it? Your grandfather's?" I said. Her eyes widened slightly. "I never met him," she said quietly. "I know." Silence settled between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, important. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" she asked finally. There it was. The question I had been avoiding for years. I looked at her carefully. "Because it was never meant to be about me," I said. "That's not an answer," she replied. "It is," I said gently. "Just not the one you expected." She leaned forward slightly. "No, Grandma," she said. "That's not enough." Her voice wasn't angry, but it was firm, honest. "I grew up thinking you didn't do anything," she continued, "that you were just there." I felt that word again. "Just, I heard Mom say you were nobody." She added softly. I didn't flinch this time, because I already knew. "And you let her believe that?" Olivia asked. I nodded. "Yes." "Why?" I took a long breath. "Because this part mattered." "Because your grandfather asked me to," I said. She blinked. "What?" "He made me promise that this would never be about recognition," I explained, "that it would stay focused on the students. And telling your family would ruin that." She asked. "No," I said quietly. "But it would change it." She frowned. How people treat things differently when they know who's behind them, I said. They start attaching meaning to the person instead of the purpose. She sat back, thinking. So you chose to be invisible? She asked. Yes, even to your own daughter. That question hurt more than anything else. Yes, I said again. Her eyes filled slightly. Do you know what that did? She asked. I swallowed. I can imagine. She doesn't respect you, Olivia said. She doesn't even try to understand you. I know. And you're okay with that? I paused, because the honest answer was complicated. I wasn't, I said softly. But I accepted it. Why she pressed? Because some choices come with a cost, I replied, and I chose to pay it. Tears slipped down her cheeks now. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's not. She wiped her face quickly. She needs to know, Olivia said. My heart tightened. No, I said firmly. Her head snapped up. Why not? Because it would hurt her, I said. Olivia stared at me in disbelief. Hurt her, she repeated. She's the one who hurt you. That doesn't mean I want to hurt her back, I said calmly. It's not about hurting her, Olivia insisted. It's about the truth. I shook my head. The truth isn't always something people are ready for, I said. She needs to be, Olivia said. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the strength in her voice, at the conviction in her eyes, and I realized something. The moment I had been waiting for, the moment I had been afraid of, was no longer in my control. Olivia, I said softly, promise me something. What? Don't act out of anger, I said. If you tell her, do it with understanding. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. I promise, she said, but I wasn't sure if that promise would be enough, because once the truth is spoken, it can't be taken back. And something told me that moment was closer than either of us were ready for. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was afraid of the truth coming out, but because I knew what it would do once it did. Truth doesn't just reveal things, it rearranges relationships. The next morning, my phone rang before I even finished my coffee. Melissa, again. That alone told me everything. Mom, she said, her voice sharp, controlled. Did Olivia come to see you? I didn't lie. Yes. A pause. Then, what did you tell her? I took a breath. The truth, I said. Silence. Heavy. Cold. What truth? She asked slowly. And there it was. The moment. I could still stop it. Still soften it. Still protect her from what was coming. But I had already made a different promise. To never lie, I said quietly. She showed me the foundation documents. Another pause. Longer this time. Then I heard something in her voice I hadn't heard in years. Uncertainty. That doesn't mean anything, she said quickly. There are plenty of Hendersons. You know my full name, Melissa? I replied, gently. Her breathing changed. Faster now. Uneven? No, she said. No, that's not possible. It is, I said. You're telling me she started, then stop. You're telling me you're behind that scholarship I built it? I said. Yes. The silence that followed was louder than anything she could have said. I could almost hear her mind racing, replaying every moment, every assumption, every word she had ever spoken about me. "That's ridiculous," she said finally. "If that were true, I would have known." I closed my eyes. "You didn't ask," I said softly. That hit her. I could feel it. "You expect me to believe that you had that kind of money," she pressed. "I sold what your father and I built," I said. "You sold everything?" she asked. "Yes." "For a scholarship," she said, disbelief rising in her voice. "For students," I corrected. She laughed. But it wasn't amused, it was defensive. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "People don't just give away their entire lives like that." "Some do," I replied. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. There it was, the question that mattered most. I took a long breath. "Because it wasn't about being known," I said. "It was about being useful." "That's not an answer," she snapped. "It is," I said calmly. "You just don't like it. I don't understand it," she shot back. "That's different." Her voice cracked slightly. "Do you have any idea what this looks like?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "It looks like you hid everything from your own family," she said. "I protected something important," I replied. "At the cost of what?" she demanded. I didn't answer right away. Because the answer was simple, but painful. "At the cost of being misunderstood," I said. She didn't speak. And for a moment, neither did I. Then she said something that cut deeper than anything else. "All those years," she whispered, "I thought you were just drifting through life." I closed my eyes. "I know. And you let me believe that," she added. "Yes." "Why would you do that to me?" she asked, her voice breaking now. That question, that one hurt. Because it came from a place of pain, not anger, because I thought you would understand someday. I said, softly. She let out a bitter laugh. "Understand what?" "That my mother chose strangers over her own daughter." I opened my eyes. "That's not what I did," I said firmly. "Then what did you do?" she demanded. "I chose to honor a promise," I said. "To who?" she asked. "To your father." That stopped her. Completely. Silence again. But this time, it was different. "He asked you to hide it," she said slowly. "He asked me to keep it pure," I explained, "to make sure it stayed about the students, not about recognition." "And that meant lying to your family," she said. "I never lied," I said. "I just didn't speak." "That's the same thing," she snapped. "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." She didn't respond. And I realized something. This wasn't just about the scholarship. This was about everything she believed about, was about everything she believed about me. Everything she had built her identity on. And now, it was all being challenged. "You think this makes you better than me?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. What all this me? Everything she had built her identity on. And now, it was all being challenged. "You think this makes you better than me?" she asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. "What all this sacrifice, this humility?" she said. "You think that makes you superior?" "No," I said immediately. "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" she demanded. "It's about impact," I said. "About doing something that matters." "I do things that matter," she said defensively. "I know you do," I replied. "Then why does it feel like you're judging me?" she asked. I paused. Because I needed to be careful here. "I'm not judging you," I said gently. "I'm just different from you." She exhaled sharply. I built my life from nothing, she said. I worked for everything I have. And I'm proud of you, I said. Then why didn't you ever tell me this? She pressed. Because I didn't want it to change how you saw success, I said. It already has, she whispered. That hit me hard, how I asked softly. Because now I don't know what success even means, she said. I felt my chest tighten. This was the cost, not just for me, but for her. Success isn't one thing, I said gently. It never was. She didn't answer, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, I told my children you were nobody. I swallowed. I know, and you just stood there and took it, she added. Yes. Why? She asked again, softer this time. I took a deep breath. Because I knew it wasn't true, I said. That broke something in her. I could hear it, in the silence that followed, in the way her breathing changed, in the absence of anger. Mom, she whispered. It had been a long time since she said it like that. Not as a habit, not as a label, but as something real. I didn't know, she said. I know, I replied. I was wrong, she added. Yes, I said gently. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know how to fix this, she admitted. I closed my eyes. Because neither did I. But I knew one thing. This isn't about fixing, I said softly. It's about understanding. Another pause. Then she said something that told me everything had changed. I need to see it, she said. What? The scholarship, she clarified. The ceremony. The students. Everything. I hesitated. Because that door once opened, couldn't be closed again. It's next week, I said. He'll be there, she replied. And just like that, the truth was no longer hidden. It was moving forward, towards something neither of us could fully predict. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. The day of the ceremony arrived faster than I expected, or maybe I had just spent too many years avoiding it. I stood in front of my closet that morning longer than necessary, staring at dresses I rarely wore. For years, it didn't matter what I wore. No one was looking. No one was supposed to. But today, that was no longer true. I chose something simple. Navy blue, modest, quiet. Like me. Or at least like the version of me everyone had known. When I arrived at the auditorium, everything felt familiar. The same building, the same stage, the same rows of seats filling slowly with families, students, faculty. Excitement, hope, nervous energy. It never changed. And yet today felt completely different. Because for the first time, I wasn't invisible anymore. I walked toward the back row out of habit, but I stopped halfway. Because I saw them. Melissa, Olivia, Ethan, all sitting together. Melissa looked tense, rigid, like she didn't quite belong here but refused to admit it. Olivia spotted me first. Her face softened immediately. She gave me a small nod. Not dramatic, not obvious, but enough. Enough to say, I see you now. Ethan followed her gaze. Grandma? He whispered loudly, waving before Melissa could stop him. Heads turned. Just a few, but enough to make Melissa stiffen even more. I walked over slowly. Hi, sweetheart, I said, smiling gently at Ethan. You came, he said. I always do, I replied. Melissa looked up at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, You never told me you came to these. I didn't think you were interested, I said. Her jaw tightened slightly. I am now, she replied. I nodded, Can I sit with you? I asked. She hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. Yes. I sat beside Olivia. She leaned slightly toward me. Everything's about to start, she whispered. I nodded. I know. The lights dimmed, and just like every year, the ceremony began. A speaker walked onto the stage, welcoming everyone, talking about the importance of education, of opportunity, of believing in potential. Words I had heard countless times, but today they carried weight, because now they weren't just mine to hold, they were out in the open. The Henderson Education Foundation, the speaker continued, has been transforming lives for over 2 decades. Melissa shifted slightly beside me. I could feel it, her attention sharpening. Hundreds of students have received support through this program, the speaker went on, many of whom are here today as graduates, professionals, and leaders in their communities. Applause filled the room. I glanced at Olivia. Her eyes were fixed on the stage, focused, present. This year, the speaker said, we have one of the most competitive groups of applicants we've ever seen. My heart began to beat faster. This scholarship is not just about financial aid, they continued. It's about belief, about recognizing potential in places others may overlook. Olivia's fingers tightened slightly in her lap. I noticed, because I knew that feeling. The finalists, the speaker said, represent resilience, intelligence, and heart. One by one, names were called. Students walked across the stage, each with their own story, each with their own future. And then, Olivia Carter. Time slowed. She stood up beside me. For a moment, she looked at me, not for reassurance, not for permission, just connection. You've got this, I whispered. She nodded, then walked toward the stage. Melissa watched her go, her expression unreadable, tight, focused. But something else, too. Something softer, something uncertain. Olivia stepped onto the stage, confident, poised, nothing like the girl who had once hesitated over her own essay. She had grown, in ways Melissa hadn't seen, in ways I had. She took her place among the finalists. The speaker smiled. These students, they said, remind us why this foundation exists. They paused, then added something new, something unexpected. And this year, we have decided to do something different. My heart skipped. That wasn't part of the plan. Beside me, Rebecca stood up from her seat near the front. No, I thought immediately. Not now. After 20 years, the speaker continued, it's time to recognize the person behind this foundation. The room stirred. Murmurs, curiosity, excitement. Melissa turned slowly toward me, her eyes wide. What is happening? She whispered. I didn't answer, because I already knew. Rebecca stepped onto the stage, holding a microphone. Some people, she said, believe that impact requires visibility. She paused. But for 20 years, one person has proven that it doesn't. My chest tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. We had agreed. We had planned. She built something that changed lives, Rebecca continued. And she did it quietly, without recognition, without acknowledgement. The room was completely silent now. And today, she said, we believe it's time to say thank you. My heart pounded. Melissa's hand gripped the armrest. Tightly. Mom, she whispered. Rebecca looked directly toward me and smiled. Pauline Henderson, she said, would you please join us on stage? Everything stopped. The room, the noise, the air itself. I couldn't move. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't ready. Beside me, Olivia squeezed my hand, gently. It's okay, she whispered. Melissa stared at me, tears already forming in her eyes. You, she said, her voice breaking its really you. I looked at her, at my daughter, at everything we had been through, at everything we hadn't said. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about breaking a promise. It was about completing it. William had asked me to keep it pure E, and I had, for 20 years. But maybe. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about breaking a promise. It was about completing it. William had asked me to keep it pure, and I had, for 20 years. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to let the world see what that purity had created. I stood up slowly. The room watched. Every eye, every breath, every expectation. I walked toward the stage. Each step felt heavier than the last, but also lighter, because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. When I reached Rebecca, she hugged me, softly. "Thank you," she whispered. I took the microphone, my hand steady, my heart not so much. I looked out at the audience, at the students, at Olivia, at Melissa, and for the first time, I let myself be seen. Standing on that stage, I realized something I had avoided for 20 years. It wasn't the applause that frightened me. It was the attention. Because attention meant questions, and questions meant answers, and answers meant facing everything I had kept hidden. I adjusted the microphone slightly, the sound echoing softly through the auditorium. For a moment, I said nothing. I just looked at the students, at the teachers, at the families, and then at Melissa. She was staring at me like she didn't recognize the person standing on that stage. And maybe she didn't. "Good afternoon," I began. My voice was steady, quieter than most speakers, but clear. "I'm not used to being up here," I said. A small ripple of laughter moved through the room. I smiled faintly. That was never the plan. I paused, because I wanted them to understand that part. This foundation, this scholarship was never meant to have a face, I continued. It was meant to have a purpose. The room fell silent again. Listening. Really listening. Many years ago, I said my husband and I talked about the students who don't always get seen. I glanced down briefly, just enough to gather myself. The ones who work hard, I went on, who have potential, but don't have someone standing behind them saying, "You matter." Olivia's face came into view again, and for a second, that was all I needed. When he passed away, I said quietly, he asked me to make a promise. I could feel the weight of those words, even now. He asked me to make sure that what we built would never become about recognition. A few people shifted in their seats, leaning forward, understanding something deeper was being said. So I stayed in the background. I continued. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I believed the students deserved to be the center of the story. I paused again, and this time I let the silence sit. Because silence can carry truth better than words. For 20 years, I said I have watched students walk across the stage. I looked toward Olivia again, and every single one of them reminded me that belief can change a life. My voice softened. Just slightly. Not money, I added. Not titles, not recognition. I let my gaze move across the room. Belief. No one moved. No one spoke. And in that moment, I knew they understood. At least, a part of it. I didn't expect to be standing here today, I admitted. A small smile crossed my face. But sometimes, life decides it's time for certain things to be seen. That line wasn't planned, but it was true. I turned slightly, looking toward the row where Melissa sat. She was crying now, quietly, trying not to be seen. And for the first time, I didn't look away from her pain, because she needed to feel it, just like I had. For those of you receiving this scholarship today, I continued, turning back to the audience. I want you to understand something. The finalists straightened slightly, listening closely. This is not charity, I said. It is investment. Their expressions shifted. Some surprised, some thoughtful. We are not giving you something because you lack, I explained. We are recognizing something because you have. I saw Olivia's shoulders lift slightly, like something inside her had just settled. You have potential, I said. You have determination. You have a future worth believing in. I took a breath. And now, it's your responsibility to carry that forward. The room remained completely still. You don't owe this foundation anything, I added, but you do owe something to the people who come after you. A few heads nodded, slowly, understanding. Because the greatest impact you will ever have, I said, is not what you achieve for yourself. I let that sentence hang for just a moment. It's what you make possible for someone else. Applause began, soft at first, then stronger, then louder, until the entire room was filled with it. I stepped back slightly, letting it happen, letting it pass, because this wasn't about me. It never had been. When the applause finally faded, Principal Reynolds stepped forward again. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson, he said, his voice full of respect. I nodded and stepped aside. But as I turned to walk off the stage, I heard something. Grandma Ethan's voice. Clear, proud, not embarrassed, not hesitant, proud. I stopped, just for a second, and looked back. He was standing now, grinning, like he had just discovered something incredible. That's my grandma, he said to the people around him. A few smiled, some clapped again, but what mattered was him. Because in that moment, something had changed, not just publicly, but personally. I walked off the stage slowly. Rebecca met me at the side. You did it, she said softly. I didn't plan to, I replied. She smiled. Sometimes the best things aren't planned. I nodded, because she was right. As I returned to my seat, Melissa stood up. She didn't wait, didn't hesitate. She stepped into the aisle and walked toward me. Her eyes were red, her expression unguarded. Raw. Mom, she said. Her voice broke on the word, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. The audience, the ceremony, the applause, all of it. It was just us, standing there, after years of distance, years of misunderstanding, years of silence. I'm so sorry, she whispered. And just like that, the moment I had imagined 100 different ways finally happened, but not the way I expected. Because there was no anger in me, no desire to prove anything. Only the moment I had imagined 100 different ways finally happened, but not the way I expected. Because there was no anger in me, no desire to prove anything, only understanding. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something new. I'm so sorry. Melissa's words stayed in the air between us, fragile and trembling. For years, I had imagined what this moment might look like. Anger, defensiveness, maybe even denial. But not this. Not her standing in front of me, eyes filled with tears, voice breaking under the weight of everything she was finally beginning to understand. I didn't respond right away. Because apologies, real ones, deserve to be heard fully, not rushed, not interrupted. I didn't know, she said again, her voice quieter now. I didn't see it. I didn't even try to see it. I nodded slowly. I know. Her face crumpled slightly. That's not enough. I said things I taught my children, things about you that weren't just wrong, they were cruel. Behind her, I could feel the room watching, listening. But somehow, it no longer mattered. This moment had become private, even in a crowded auditorium. Melissa, I said gently, this isn't something you fix in one sentence. I don't want to fix it in one sentence, she said quickly. I don't know where to start. That honesty, that was new. And it mattered. You start by understanding, I said. Her shoulders shook slightly. I'm trying. I looked at her carefully, at the daughter I had raised, the one I had lost somewhere along the way, and the one standing in front of me now beginning to come back. Then listen, I said softly. She nodded immediately. I spent years thinking success had to look a certain way, she admitted. Money, status, recognition. I didn't interrupt. Everything I built, everything I chased, she continued. I thought that's what mattered. And now I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head slightly. Now I don't know, she said. That was the truth. And truth, even when uncertain, is a powerful place to begin. You don't have to know yet, I said. But I should have known you, she replied. That landed deeper than anything else she had said. I should have asked questions, she went on. I should have paid attention. Instead, I made assumptions. Her voice dropped. I reduced you to something smaller because it made me feel bigger. Silence. Heavy. Honest. I'm sorry, she said again. This time I believed her, not because of the words, but because of everything behind them. I reached out slowly and took her hand. Her fingers tightened around mine immediately, like she had been waiting for that. I never needed you to see me as extraordinary, I said quietly. Her eyes filled again. I just needed you to see me. That broke her, completely. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. Not carefully, not politely, but tightly, desperately, like she was trying to hold on to something she had almost lost. I do see you now, she whispered. I really do. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting that settle. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from long conversations. It comes from simple truths finally being spoken. Behind us, the ceremony continued. But for a few moments, we stayed there, just holding on. When we finally pulled apart, Olivia and Ethan were standing nearby. They had moved closer without us noticing. Olivia's eyes were red, but she was smiling. Ethan looked different, not confused, not unsure, but proud. Grandma, he said, stepping forward. That was the best speech ever. I smiled softly. Thank you, sweetheart. You helped all those kids? He asked. Yes, like a lot of them, yes. He shook his head in disbelief. That's crazy. I laughed quietly. In a good way, I hope. In the best way, he said. Then he paused and added something that meant more than anything else that had happened that day. I'm going to tell everyone at school you're my grandma. Melissa let out a small, emotional laugh. I think they might already know, she said. He grinned. Yeah, but now I know. Olivia stepped closer. She didn't hug me right away. Instead, she looked at me. Really looked at me. You trusted me, she said quietly. Yes, you could have told me earlier. Olivia stepped closer. She didn't hug me right away. Instead, she looked at me. Really looked at me. You trusted me, she said quietly. Yes, you could have told me earlier, she added. I could have, I agreed. Why didn't you? I smiled gently. Because you needed to discover it, I said, not just hear it. She nodded slowly. Understanding. That makes sense, she said. Then she hugged me, softly, but with intention. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For showing me what real success looks like. I felt my chest tighten again. But this time, not from pain. From something else. Something lighter. Something whole. As the ceremony continued, Principal Reynolds approached us. Mrs. Henderson, he said respectfully, we'd like you to stay near the front for the remainder of the event. I nodded. Of course. He smiled. And thank you for everything. I inclined my head slightly. Because gratitude still felt unfamiliar when directed at me. We moved to the front row together. All of us. Melissa sat beside me, quiet, thoughtful, not trying to speak, just present, and for the first time in years. That was enough. As the final award was announced, Olivia Carter. The room erupted into applause. She froze for a moment, then looked at me, then at her mother. Melissa nodded. Proud. Not performative, not forced. Proud. Olivia walked onto the stage, stronger than she had ever been. Not just because of the scholarship, but because of what she had discovered. Who she had become. And as I watched her stand there, holding that moment, I realized something. This was what it had all been for. Not the recognition, not the applause, but this, a future, a continuation, a legacy that didn't need my name, because it lived on through them. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel something I had kept quiet for years. Not pride, but peace. After the ceremony ended, people didn't leave right away. They lingered, talking, congratulating students, shaking hands. And unexpectedly, some of them approached me. At first, I didn't know how to respond. A middle-aged woman came up, her eyes warm. My son received this scholarship 12 years ago, she said. He's a doctor now. I smiled gently. That's wonderful. She shook her head. No, what's wonderful is what you did for him. For us. I didn't correct her, didn't explain, because I had learned something. Sometimes gratitude doesn't need to be redirected. It just needs to be accepted. Thank you, she added. And then she walked away. Another man followed, then another, each with a story, each with a connection. And with every person, I realized something I had never fully allowed myself to see. This wasn't just a program. It was a ripple, a quiet one, but powerful. Melissa stood a few steps behind me, watching all of it. She didn't interrupt, didn't insert herself. She just observed, and I could see it on her face. The shift, not dramatic, but real. After a while, the crowd began to thin. The noise softened, the energy settled, and for the first time that day, we were alone again. Just the four of us. Melissa looked at me carefully. I didn't know it was this big, she said. I nodded. I didn't either. Not at first. How could you not? She asked. Because I wasn't measuring it, I replied. I was just continuing it. She exhaled slowly. I measure everything, she admitted. I know, I said, gently. And maybe that's the problem, she added. I tilted my head slightly. Maybe it's just your way of understanding the world. She shook her head. No, she said. It's my way of controlling it. That honesty again. Still new, still fragile, but growing. Olivia stepped closer, holding the envelope she had received. I still can't believe this, she said. I smiled. You earned it. She looked down at the envelope, then back at me. IT feels different now, she said. How Olivia stepped closer, holding the envelope she had received. I still can't believe this, she said. I smiled. You earned it. She looked down at the envelope, then back at me. It feels different now, she said. How? She hesitated. Before it felt like an opportunity, she said. Now it feels like a responsibility. I nodded slowly. That's because you understand what's behind it, I said. She swallowed. I don't want to disappoint you, she added. I reached out, touching her arm gently. You won't, I said. Not by being imperfect. She frowned slightly. Then how? By forgetting why you started, I said. She let that sink in, then nodded. I won't forget, she said. Ethan, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. So, does this mean Grandma is like super rich? He asked. Melissa let out a short laugh despite herself. Ethan, she said. What? He shrugged. It's a fair question. I smiled. No, I said. It means I made a choice a long time ago. To give it away, he asked. Yes. He blinked. All of it, yes. He looked genuinely confused. Why? That question again. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt simple. Because keeping it wouldn't have made me happier, I said. And giving it away did, he asked. I nodded. Yes. He thought about that, harder than I expected. That's weird, he said finally. I laughed softly. It might seem that way. He shook his head. No, I think it's cool, he corrected. Melissa looked at him, then at me. And I could see something shifting inside her, could see something shifting inside her again. Something quieter, but deeper. Can we go somewhere? She asked suddenly. I looked at her. Where? Anywhere, she said. Just not here. I understood. She needed space, not to escape, but to process. There's a small Kafkain, something quieter, but deeper. Can we go somewhere? She asked suddenly. I looked at her. Where? Anywhere, she said. Just not here. I understood. She needed space, not to escape, but to process. There's a small cafe nearby, I said. I go there sometimes. She nodded immediately. Let's go. We walked together. No rush. No urgency. Just together. The cafe was quiet, warm, familiar. I had sat at that same corner table many times before. Alone. But today, it was different. We ordered coffee, tea for Olivia, hot chocolate for Ethan. Simple things, grounding things. When we sat down, no one spoke right away. Not because there was nothing to say, but because there was too much. Finally, Melissa broke the silence. I've spent my whole life trying to prove something, she said. To who? I asked. She looked down at her cup. To everyone, she said. To the world. To myself. I waited. And I think I thought I was also proving something to you, she added. My chest tightened slightly. You didn't have to, I said. I know that now, she replied. She looked up at me. But I didn't then. I nodded, because I understood that kind of pressure. That need to be seen, validated. Do you know what I was really chasing? She asked. What approval, she said. I held her gaze. You already had it, I said. Her eyes filled again. But you never said it, she whispered. That hit me, hard. Because she was right. I thought showing it was enough, I said quietly. It wasn't, she replied. Silence, but not uncomfortable. Just honest. I needed to hear it, she added. I took a deep breath. Because this mattered. I'm proud of you, Melissa, I said. The words felt simple, but they carried years behind them. She broke again. But this time, it wasn't painful. It was release. I wish I had heard that sooner, she said. I wish I had said it sooner, I replied. We sat there for a while, letting that settle, letting years of distance slowly close, and in that quiet cafe, something changed. Not dramatically, not instantly, but truly. We weren't perfect. We weren't suddenly healed. But we were finally facing each other. The days after the ceremony didn't go back to normal, because there was no normal left to return to. Something had shifted, not just publicly, but inside our family. Melissa started calling me, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because there was no normal left to return to. Something had shifted, not just publicly, but inside our family. Melissa started calling me, not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but intentionally. The first time, I almost didn't pick up. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't used to it. Hi, Mom, she said when I answered. Simple, soft, uncertain. Hi, I replied. There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar. I was thinking about what you said, she began. About what? I asked. Success, she said, and belief. I waited. I've been doing everything the same way for years, she continued, measuring, competing, proving. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. And now it feels... She hesitated. Empty. I offered gently. She exhaled. Yes, that word carried weight. I don't know how to change that, she admitted. You don't have to change everything at once, I said. Then, where do I start? I thought for a moment. Start by asking yourself one question, I said. Who benefits from what I'm doing? Silence. Then, that's different. Then where do I start? I thought for a moment. Start by asking yourself one question, I said. Who benefits from what I'm doing? Silence. Then that's different, she said. Yes. I've always asked what I get from it, she added. I know. She laughed quietly. Of course you do. We talked for a while longer, not about the past, not about mistakes, just about direction. And when we hung up, I realized something. This wasn't repair. This was rebuilding. Slow, intentional, real. A few days later, Melissa asked if she could come over. With the kids, she added quickly. You don't have to ask, I said. I know, she replied. But I want to. That difference mattered. When they arrived, the energy felt different, lighter, less guarded. Ethan ran in first like always. "Grandma," he called out. But this time there was pride in it, not just excitement. Olivia followed carrying a notebook. "I've been writing ideas," she said immediately. "For what?" "For what I want to do with the scholarship," she explained. I smiled. "Already?" She nodded. "I don't want to waste time." Melissa walked in last, more slowly, more thoughtfully. She looked around my home, really looked this time, at the photos, at the books, at the quiet details she had never paid attention to before. "It's different," she said. "What as I asked?" "Being here," she replied. I tilted my head slightly. "I used to think this place was small," she admitted. "I didn't react. I just listened. And now it feels—" She searched for the word. "Full," she finished. I smiled gently. "It always was," I said. She nodded. I just couldn't see it. We sat down together. No formal plan, no structured conversation, just being together. Olivia opened her notebook. "I've been thinking about mentorship programs," she said, "for students who don't win the scholarship." I raised an eyebrow slightly. "Tell me more." "They still need support," she explained. "Just because they don't get selected doesn't mean they don't have potential." I felt something warm settle in my chest. "That's true," I said. "I want to create something for them," she continued, "even if it's small at first." Melissa watched her, carefully. "You don't have to take all of this on at once," she said. Olivia shook her head. "I'm not taking it on," she replied. "I'm continuing it." Melissa went quiet, and I could see it. The moment something connected for her. The difference between ownership and legacy. Ethan, who had been drawing quietly, looked up. "Can I help too?" he asked. Olivia smiled. "You're 10. So, he shrugged. We laughed. "Of course you can help," I said. "How?" I thought for a moment. "By being kind to people who don't feel seen," I said. He frowned slightly. "That sounds hard." "It is," I admitted, "but it matters." He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Simple, direct, but sincere." Later that afternoon, Melissa and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter watching me as I made tea. "I've been thinking about something," she said. I glanced at her. "What I built my entire identity on being impressive," she said. I nodded. "And now I don't know who I am without that," she added. I set the kettle down. "You're still the same person," I said. "Am I?" she asked. "Yes." "Then why does it feel like everything is changing?" she pressed. "Because your understanding of yourself is changing," I explained. She considered that. "So, I'm not losing anything?" she asked. "No," I said softly. "You're gaining perspective." She let out a slow breath. "That's terrifying," she admitted. I smiled slightly. "It can be." She looked at me. "Were you ever afraid?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "Then why did you keep going?" I met her gaze. "Because I believed in something bigger than my fear," I said. She held that for a moment, then nodded. "I want to find that," she said. "You will," I replied. That evening, as they were getting ready to leave, Melissa hesitated at the door. "Mom," she said. "Yes, would it be okay if I came to the next board meeting?" That surprised me. "You want to attend?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Not to take over, not to change anything." She paused. "I just want to understand." I studied her for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." She smiled. Not confidently, not perfectly, but genuinely. "Me too," she said. As they walked out, Ethan turned back one last time. "Hey, Grandma." "Yes, you're not nobody," he said. I smiled. "I never was." He grinned. "I know." And as the door closed behind them, I realized something. For years, I had been invisible by choice. But now, I was visible by connection. And somehow, that mattered more. The first board meeting Melissa attended was quiet. Not because there was nothing to discuss, but because she didn't speak much, and that was new. I watched her carefully from across the table, not as a mother judging her child, but as someone observing a person learning to see differently. Rebecca was leading the meeting as always. Calm, structured, focused. "We've received a higher number of applications this year," she said. "Nearly double." Melissa's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt, didn't question. She just listened. "We're going to need to expand our review panel," Rebecca continued, "and possibly increase funding for mentorship support." That caught Melissa's attention. Her gaze shifted toward Olivia, who sat quietly beside me taking notes. The idea she had mentioned, it was already becoming real. "Any thoughts?" Rebecca asked the room. There was a pause. A few board members offered suggestions, measured, practical. And then Melissa spoke. Not loudly, not confidently, but honestly. "What if we didn't just expand the number of reviewers," she said slowly, "but also changed how we evaluate applicants?" The room turned toward her. Not dismissive, curious. Rebecca tilted her head slightly. "What do you mean?" Melissa took a breath. "I've spent most of my career evaluating people based on measurable results," she said. "Performance, output, metrics." I felt something shift in the room. Subtle, but present. "And I've realized that approach misses something," she continued. Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "What does it miss?" she asked. Melissa glanced briefly at me, then back at Rebecca. "Potential," she said. The word landed softly, but powerfully. "Some people don't have the same opportunities to produce impressive results," she added, "but that doesn't mean they lack ability." No one spoke, because they were listening, really listening. "I think we should consider adding interviews," she said, "or personal conversations, something that lets us see who they are, not just what they've done." Rebecca smiled, not politely, but genuinely. "That's actually something we've discussed before," she said. "But we didn't have the resources." Melissa nodded. "I might be able to help with that," she said. The room went still again, not shocked, but attentive. "How?" Rebecca asked. Melissa hesitated, then said something that surprised even me. "I want to contribute," she said. "Not donate, not control." "Contribute? In what way?" Rebecca asked. Melissa took a breath. "I can fund asked." Melissa took a breath. "I can fund a pilot program," she said, "for mentorship and interviews. Start small, see how it works." I watched her closely, because this wasn't the Melissa I had known before. This wasn't about recognition or proving something. This was a pilot program, she said, for mentorship and interviews. Start small, see how it works. I watched her closely, because this wasn't the Melissa I had known before. This wasn't about recognition or proving something. This was aligned. "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," Melissa said. No hesitation. No performance, just clarity. "And this wouldn't come with any conditions," Rebecca added carefully. Melissa shook her head. "No conditions, she said. I don't want my name attached. I don't want control. She paused. I just want to help build something that matters. Silence filled the room. But this time, it felt full, not empty. Rebecca looked at me briefly, then back at Melissa. I think we'd be honored to work with you, she said. Melissa nodded, and for a moment, her composure broke just slightly. Not visibly to most, but I saw it, because I knew her. The relief, the fear, the hope, all at once. After the meeting, we stepped outside together. The air was cool, fresh. Melissa exhaled deeply. I didn't plan to say that, she admitted. I know, I said. Was it too much? She asked. I shook my head. No, I said. It was exactly enough. She looked at me. Are you sure? Yes. She nodded slowly. I felt different in there, she said. How? Like I wasn't trying to prove anything, she replied. I smiled. That's because you weren't. She laughed softly. That's new. We stood there for a moment, side by side, not distant, not strained, just present. I spent so many years thinking you didn't understand the world I lived in, she said, and now I asked. She looked at me. I think you understood it better than I did, she said. I didn't respond, because that realization was hers to hold. Olivia joined us a moment later. That was amazing, she said to Melissa. Melissa blinked. What was? You, Olivia said. What you said in there? Melissa shook her head slightly. I was just talking. No, Olivia said firmly. You were changing something. Melissa went quiet, and I could see it. The weight of that, not heavy, but meaningful. Ethan ran up shortly after. Are we done? He asked. Yes, Melissa said. Good, he replied. I'm hungry. We laughed, because some things never change. As we walked toward the car, Melissa slowed slightly. Mom, she said. Yes, do you think Dad would be proud of this? She asked. The question caught me off guard, not because of what she asked, but because of how she asked it. Like a daughter again, not a woman trying to prove herself. I looked at her carefully. He would be proud of you, I said. Her eyes filled slightly. Not of what I've built, she asked. I shook my head. He would be proud of who you're becoming, I said. That landed deeply. She nodded slowly. I think I'm finally starting to understand him too, she said. I smiled. He always believed in you, I said. Even when I didn't deserve it. She asked. Yes. She let out a quiet breath. Then I guess it's my turn to live up to that, she said. I didn't correct her, didn't soften it, because this time, she wasn't chasing approval. She was embracing responsibility. And as we got into the car together, I realized something. The story hadn't ended with the truth being revealed. That was just the turning point. This was the continuation, where choices mattered, where actions defined the future, where legacy wasn't inherited. It was lived. It didn't happen all at once. That's the truth people don't like to hear about healing. There's no single moment where everything becomes perfect. No instant transformation where the past disappears. Instead, it happens quietly. In small choices. In repeated actions. in the way people show up again and again. A few months passed, not dramatically, not in some sweeping cinematic way, but steadily, consistently. Melissa kept attending board meetings. At first, she listened more than she spoke. Then slowly she began contributing, not to control, not to impress, but to support. The mentorship program she funded started small. Just 10 students, 10 conversations, 10 chances to be seen. But I watched what happened, the way those students responded, the way they opened up when someone took the time to actually listen to them. It reminded me of something I had always believed. You don't need to change the world all at once. You just need to change someone's world. Olivia became part of that program too. Not as a recipient anymore, but as a mentor. The first time she told me, I saw it in her eyes. Not pressure, not fear, purpose. I want them to feel what I felt, she said. What did you feel? I asked. She thought for a moment. Seen, she said. That word again. It kept coming back, because that was the heart of everything. Ethan changed too, in his own way. Subtle, but real. One afternoon, he told me about a boy at school. He sits alone at lunch, Ethan said. What do you do? I asked. I sat with him, he replied. I smiled, and he didn't talk much, Ethan said. But I think he liked it. That matters, I said. Ethan shrugged. It wasn't a big deal, he added. But it was, because kindness rarely feels big when you're doing it, but it always is. Melissa changed the most, not in what she had, but in how she lived. She still worked, still successful, still driven. But something was different. She wasn't chasing anymore. She was choosing. One evening, she invited me over for dinner. Her home hadn't changed. It was still beautiful, still impressive, but the atmosphere that had changed. It felt warmer, less staged, more lived in. We sat at the table together. No distractions, no phones, just conversation. I used to think this was enough, she said, looking around. And now I asked. Now I think it's just part of it, she replied. I nodded. Because that was the truth. Success isn't wrong. It's just incomplete on its own. She looked at me. I told someone about you today, she said. I raised an eyebrow slightly. In a meeting, she added. They were talking about impact, about visibility, and I asked. I told them the most impactful person I know spent 20 years being invisible, she said. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I used to be embarrassed to talk about you. She continued quietly. I know, I said. She swallowed. And now I'm proud, she added. That word again. But this time it felt different. Not something she needed from me. Something she wanted to give. Thank you, I said. She shook her head slightly. No, she said. Thank you. We sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable, complete. Not because everything had been erased, but because everything had been faced. Later that night, as I prepared to leave, Olivia walked me to the door. I've been thinking about something, she said. What is it I want to keep this going, she said. You will. No, she clarified. I mean long-term, like you did. I studied her carefully. Why? She smiled slightly. Because I understand now, she said. Understand what? That it's not about being remembered, she replied. It's about what continues after you. I felt something settle deep inside me, a quiet sense of completion. You already understand more than I did at your age, I said. She laughed softly. That's because I had you. I shook my head. No, I said. That's because you chose to see. She nodded. And in that moment, I knew. The foundation didn't need me anymore. Not in the same way. Because it had already become something bigger. Something living. Something carried forward. As I stepped outside, the night air felt calm. Still. Peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to reflect. Not on what had been lost, but on what had been built. My daughter once told her children I was nobody. And for a while, I believed that was how the world saw me. But now, I understood something different. Being somebody was never about being known. It was about being meaningful. And meaning doesn't need recognition. It just needs intention. As I walked to my car, I thought about William, about the promise I had made, and I smiled, because I had kept it. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but faithfully. And now, it was no longer just mine to carry. It belonged to them, to Melissa, to Olivia, to Ethan, to every student who would walk across that stage and feel seen. Afterward. If there's one thing this story teaches, it's this. We often measure people by what we can see. Titles, money, recognition. But the most meaningful impact in this world is often invisible. It lives in quiet choices, in unseen sacrifices, in the lives we touch without ever knowing how far that impact reaches. Sometimes, the people we overlook are the very ones holding everything together. And sometimes, the greatest mistake we make is assuming we already understand someone without ever truly seeing them. But here's the hope. It's never too late to look again, to listen, to ask questions, to rebuild what we thought was lost. Because understanding doesn't come from time. It comes from intention. And when we choose to see each other clearly, we don't just change relationships, we change legacies. If this story touched you in any way, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever misunderstood someone close to you or felt unseen by the people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in stories that remind us what really matters, please like, subscribe, and join this community, where we don't just tell stories, we learn from them.